just another step. There are. And I will tell you, and I'm not asking for any credit for it, that there are a lot worse things that would have passed if I hadn't been in the room. That's the reality, and we deal with that every day on taxes and spending and guns and a whole list of issues.
And to your question, I don't have the number of repeat offenders, but I know it's high. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do the stop the early release. That's why that was an important part of the person part of the bill. The one statistic I do have is I know that more people were killed, I think it was 2011 or 12, it's an FBI statistic, with bare hands and bare feet than there were assault weapons. But like 99% were killed, or 96% of gun deaths were caused by illegal pistols, by illegal handguns, which is why the early release thing was important for me and others, and B, the gun trafficking had to be in there.
And we fought for a 3 strikes law that said if you have 3 violent felonies, you know, there's no release. Forget early release, there's no release. And so if the statistics show that a high percentage of people committing crimes with guns have multiple felonies, then absolutely we need to use that to say to the people who are seeing most of the gun violence. The legislators whose districts see most of the gun violence are the people who oppose things like 3 strikes but in this package they've agreed to support mandatory minimum for gun crimes, ending the early release, and other things that they fought to put in place just 2 years ago.
This fellow has his hand up for.
Yeah, I want us to change the subject for a second, if you don't mind. All right?
Sure.
Last night, the town passed an ordinance to abate the property taxes of the surviving spouse of the police and firefighters killed in line of duty. That's based on municipal statute 12-81X, which is the municipal option to abate tax to the surviving spouse of police officers or firefighters. And that's to some degree related to the death that we had in Easton for Storm Sandy. We've requested that EMS personnel be added to the definition under 12-81X.
Yeah.
I got it through your office, and I know the president of our organization has requested that. I was wondering where that stands as far as being implemented.
Well, I pitched the Russ Neary bill at the beginning of the session to allow for a mechanism to get a 1-year waiver from state income tax for the death of first responders in honor of Russ, and in a similar tangential approach to this. That bill is working. It had its public hearing. It's attached to another. I forget what the number is now. So many darn numbers. My understanding is that bill's going to get out of committee and get to the floor to vote on. As part, when that gets to that stage, my intention is to try and tack on this amendment, which is a little problematic because it sort of comes in after the public hearing stage. So sometimes the mechanics work. It's able to get a public hearing, do it next year. But trying this year could tee it up well for next year. So I did have that discussion, and the goal is going to be to try and tack it on to the existing Russ Neary bill.
It's really just a matter of that.
It's a definitional change.
If that night, this gentleman happened to be standing right beside me while we were doing the recovery, and all the EMS folks were at just as much risk as we were.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we're working on it. I mean, honestly, because having the bigger part of the bill, the state income tax part, it's topically the same, so it shouldn't be that big.
And I would just quickly, I'm not aware of opposition to that. So, sometimes there's opposition you don't find out about, but I'm not aware of any yet. And if there continues to be no opposition, then we'll do our best to get it on to a bill.
Yeah, great. Exactly.
I mean, if there's opposition, we'll fight the opposition, but it just becomes harder.
That's right.
Sure.
Yes. I guess. 2 questions. First, the cost on this bill to legislate. That would be my first question. The second is, as it gets to your point where you were discussing before, Steve asked you a question. Will you, as our representatives, get answers as to what was in his toxicology report? That's, a legitimate question, because we all, know that these antipsychotic drugs can cause this behavior. I think that has to play into part of it. And, how do you go about controlling that?
I would, with respect to your second part, again, the state's attorney told me less than 2 weeks ago that the privacy rights under federal law for any individual, which includes the killer and his mother, those privacy rights survive their deaths. So if the toxicology report, and I don't know this, is part of the medical record, then I don't know if we'll ever get that. If the toxicology report is not part of the medical record and covered under federal privacy laws, then we will get that. And if there's a change to the Federal Privacy Act, that would probably be retroactive, and we would get that.
I think it becomes completely relative in a criminal investigation. You know, what was the status of his friend of mine? Was it brought on by these issues? And I think it needs to come out to, because a lot of people are concerned. You know, our doctors are prescribing these antipsychotic drugs, and people are in more danger.
I think you're right that it needs to be part of the criminal investigation, and my understanding is that the state's attorney doing the criminal investigation can get the information, whether it can become public, and whether that release would violate their privacy rights is not something I can decide. I would also say to you, just so you brought it up, because it's important. Connecticut, and I put in a bill for too many years and it hasn't passed. Connecticut does not give our state's attorney a subpoena power. So our state's attorneys are extremely limited in their investigation of a lot of crimes, including this one. And they're actually relying on the federal government and federal law enforcement officials to open an investigation to get a lot of this thing. And if we could open up a subpoena to our state's attorneys, we might fare better in investigating these kinds of crimes.
And apropos to your point, part of this mental health reform is going to be a task force that's being formed to investigate a bunch of things. And one of the issues that is on that menu of things to look at is perhaps the effect of psychotropic drugs. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, it's a bad one. I hate task force because that's just, all right, let's just keep looking at it. But that's what we're doing. And I know that was in that discussion.
There's a woman in the back here.
I have a question for you before I ask the question. I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate the work you guys do. I think this has been a tough go-around for the last few years for Connecticut, and the stresses have been enormous on us with the economy and jobs and people moving out, and everything's going in the wrong direction. And I know you guys are trying to push it in the right direction, but you've got forces pushing against you. And so I want you to know that we recognize it. I think that we're all smarting since Obamacare. We're all tired. We're all worn out. And then we had a hurricane and all these natural disasters in the new town. And everybody's just spent. And I can't imagine what it's like to be up in Hartford. But I hope somehow things will turn around, because Connecticut's a wonderful state, and while lots of our neighbors and friends are leaving, some of us are being stubborn and trying not to do that. And I don't know how much longer we can push back, but we're going to keep trying. That being said, John, you brought up Trout Brook, which I think many of us still have a little piece of our heart tied to. And now that we're driving down Black Rock Turnpike every day, we feel like we're looking at Dresden after World War II. I don't know what to do. I went to the meeting the Aquarian had here and listened to their nonsense, which is just what it was, which was basically, we have enough money to cut trees and get the loggers, but we don't have any money now to clean up the mess. And it's a huge mess, and I really am afraid too for people's safety. You veer off that road, and you hit any of those trees now that are all along the embankments, and you're toast. So we've got a huge mess on our hands. We need help to know where to go to get the state to put pressure on Aquarian to do something more than what they're doing, because if it stays like this, it's a disaster. So that's my question to you is, can you guide us what to do?
I've been contacted by the folks over at Everett Road several times, went over, visited, talked to the Aquarian folks. Got the super secret report before it got published on their website. I think there was an article in the paper this week to some degree on. Here's what I've learned, is, now obviously you know it was a monster storm. Obviously you know there was monster damage. The private tree guys that are coming to harvest that wood, they have a short window to do it. If that type of pine, I forget if it's white pine or it might be white pine, but that type of tree, if it lays on the ground past June, it'll adopt the fungus, it'll be commercially unusable. So all of the wood that is getting taken out of there and culled and used, and we're actually gonna make some money and that money goes back, it's not a general fund sweep, that money actually goes back into the Centennial watershed area. That's getting driven by a commercial harvest. And because it has to get done by June, it's getting done hard and fast, and it looks like a commercial harvest, because that's what it is. Now, there's gonna be the brushy debris that's on, and one of the questions I had I talked to the guys at DEP, I talked to Esty about this, I talked to, what's the fellow's name, the site manager, Aquarium. I'm meeting next week.
Gary Haynes.
Yeah, Haynes, that's it. Supposed to meet him out there again next week. They did a biological survey on the fly, and they did a wildlife survey on the fly, and they did a plant survey on the fly. It wasn't just go and start cutting stuff. They actually did have an initial assessment of what can be done. Brushy stuff laying on the ground, the theory is, and this is what the experts told me, 3 of them, not just one of them, is that you want to have enough debris on the ground, and you've heard this, it's in the paper, you want to have enough debris on the ground in order to regenerate the right type of forest.
Have you walked,
I've been back there. It looks like, it looks like a
turnpike.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just, it
And
looks like a
and
bomb.
the problem is.
A lot of that stuff's gonna get taken out.
Well, there are also big
Yep.
trees now, right on the edge of Black Rock Turnpike. The roots are all exposed because of all of the erosion.
Mhm.
These are trees waiting to fall, and they could fall on a car. I mean, the mess is enormous.
It is a
All
monster.
whatever was it what do you call it? It's only 6 per acre. Snacks. All these so-called snacks that he was describing aren't just scattered snacks. The whole area is covered 8-10 feet high. That's not a snack.
Yep.
And what Gary Haynes did indicate was that they had enough funds for the logging, because that's gonna be a wash. They're gonna not lose money on that. But they don't have the money for the clearing.
So that's not
And that's what he told us.
I think he's wrong about
But whether they have the money or not, they have a responsibility.
Right. It's gonna
Well,
go
my
back. We'll make sure
question
that they
is,
do,
where does the pressure get put on them to make sure what needs to get done is going to get done? For
I hear the pressure,
public
yeah.
safety purposes.
I think the pressure is, and I talked to Commissioner Esty of Environmental Protection, but this is the first time I've heard that someone is saying they didn't have enough money.
Yeah, that's doing
Oh,
good. That's doing
he
good.
said, he
So-
came right out and
But,
said.
and that's great, because now we'll turn up the heat hotter.
So,
Because they have a responsibility,
Maybe that's.
aquarium companies, are good citizens for the most part, they've got money. They're not, they've got the money, it's their responsibility, they're gonna do it, and they need to clear it without increasing rates on the rest of us that are today.
Well, if you need, whatever you need from the public for support of where you need the public to go, people are at the wit's end at this point.
I'm supposed to meet with Gary next week.
So if you let us
And the best thing you can do is, since I'm not here every day in town, and you are, tell us what you're seeing.
And when did he say that? He said that at the meeting they had here?
Yes, when he was over at Town Hall.
Yeah, that's new to me.
How long ago was that?
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's new news.
Yes, yeah, no, he said that, because we asked about the snags, and he said, well, what's left on the ground will stay there. And that's,
We'll also ask about the trees with the roots exposed.
yes, especially, and when next time you drive down Black Rock Turnpike from
Yeah,
Easton,
right.
you'll see them, and that's, they're
Okay, this fellow's spoken to you.
they're about ready to
That's
fall.
fine. Well, are you okay? I mean, well, I'll stay here all night. I'll go in the parking lot and check.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I